We continue now at the top of Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph Meseches Eruvin. This is Eruvin Daf 16a. We're continuing now with a brisa which is trying to prove the issue of paritz ka'omed. We have a machlokas between Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua. When you have paritz ka'omed, when you have an equal amount of open space as walled space, is that going to be okay or not? Rav Papa said it was fine as a mechitza, and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua said it was not okay. So here in this brisa, we have a caravan that's creating mechitzos ba'avitin. Rashi says, what are avitin? Kar shetachas ukaf hagamol. They're using the pillows that are underneath the saddle of the camel. B'shlifin, Rashi says shlifin are packages, burdens. B'konim, you're using reeds. B'kolchos, you're using the stalks of vegetables. Any way that they're constructing this caravan is constructing a mechitza. Metaltal and besocha, then that area is considered a rishus hayachid, and they can carry in that area. Uvilvad shelo yehe ben gamol legamol kamale gamol, uvein ukaf leukaf kamale ukaf, uvein avid la'avid kamale avid. Brisa seems to be saying, as long as you don't have an equal amount of space to walled in space, don't have the amount of space of a camel in between the two camels, the amount of space of a saddle in between the two saddles, etc. So the implication clearly is that paritz ka'omed is a problem. It seems like Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua. So the Gemara says, Hachanami kashenichnas v'yotze. Again, what Rav Papa will have to answer is that when we say there's amount of space of a camel between two camels, it's benichnas v'yotze, meaning there's a little bit of extra space, so that a camel would easily be able to get into that in-between space. So there actually is a little more empty space than walled in space, and that's how Rav Papa will have to understand this brisa. The Gemara now continues with another proof from a Tosefta in Meseches Kilayim. Tashma coming here. Nimsasata Omer Shalosh Midos b'mechitzos. It comes out there are three midos when it comes to mechitzos and hilchas kilayim. You're using these walls in terms of kilayim in order to separate, so you can plant different items on different sides of the wall. So the first kind of mechitzos is as follows: Kol shupachos mishlosha. If the poles of the wall are less than 3 tfachim, tzarach shelo yehe bein zeh lezeh shlosha kedei shelo yizdaker hagadi bebas rosh. So you have to have less than 3 tfachim of space between each pole, and that's going to be a good wall. That's a small enough space that a goat cannot get through it. That's the shear of lavud. Kol shu gimel umigimel adalit. If you have panels that are between 3 and 4 tfachim, tzarich shelo yehe bein zeh lezeh kimiluo. You have to not have enough space, the same amount of space as the panel between each one. Kedei shelo yehe paritz ka'omed, so that it shouldn't be the same amount of empty space as walled space. V'im haya paritz meruba la'omed af keneged ha'omed aser. But if you have more empty space than walled in space, even corresponding to the walled in space, you're not going to be allowed to plant on different sides, different kinds of vegetables. And kol shu dalid ume'arba ad eser amos. Now, if the panels are from 4 tfachim until 10 amos large, tzarich shelo yehe bein zeh lezeh kimilua. Again, you cannot have the same amount of empty space as walled in space. Shelo yehe paritz ka'omed. It should not be the same amount of empty space as walled in space. V'im haya paritz ka'omed. Now, if it is that, if you have the same amount of empty space as walled in space, keneged ha'omed mutter. In this case, since you have larger panels, you're allowed to plant corresponding to the area that's walled in. Keneged ha'paritz aser, but corresponding to the area that's empty space, you cannot plant. V'im haya omed meruba al ha'paritz. Now, if you have more walled in space than open space, af keneged ha'paritz mutter, then you're even going to be allowed to plant in the area opposite the open space. Nivritza biyoser me'eser aser. But if you have an opening that's more than 10 amos, then it's going to aser the entire thing. Hayusham kanim hadukranim. Now, if you have sharp poles that are stuck into the ground, va'oselahen peyam elmal, and you make a kind of canopy, basically a tzuras hapesach, a vine runs on top in the form of a tzuras hapesach, then afilu biyoser me'eser mutter. Then even if it's more than 10 amos, that opening, that's fine because you have a tzuras hapesach. Rashi here explains the 3 levels. Harekan sholosh midos. You have here the following 3 levels. B'midah rishona dekanim pchusim migimel. Now, if you have branches or reeds that are less than 3 tvachim, lo kapdinan amilo. We don't even care about the fact that the open space is more than the walls. Kevan demiluo lo have appeared to shlosha, as long as the area of empty space is less than 3 tvachim. We won't even care again if it's more than the walled in space, because you're going to just use lavud and it's going to be as if the entire thing is enclosed. So that's level number 1. Level number 1 is when the gaps are less than 3 tfachim, we use lavud to close the whole thing off. Ad de'ika pirza shlosha. The only time we care is when you get to a gap of 3 tvachim. Uvamida shnia, now in the second level, which was panels that are between 3 and 4 tvachim, kapdinan amiluo, then we do care about the gap being the same as the walled-in space. Da'ika shir pirza lemahave kari avir, because that is enough of a pirza to be called avir. Va'asi avir hamarubu mevata la'omed. And then what's going to happen is, if your gap is more, or maybe equal, depending on Rav Papa and Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua, but if your gap is more than the walled-in space, it's going to be mevatel the walls. Da'afilo kenegdo eino mater. You won't even be allowed to plant where the walls are. Uvamida shlishis dika omed chashav. Now, in the third category, where it's more than 4 tvachim, the walled-in space, the panels are more than 4 tvachim, avir lo mevatel lo legamri. So then, even if you have open space, it's not going to be mevatel the walled-in space, umater mia kenegda. And at the very least, you're going to be allowed to plant opposite the actual walled-in space. So those are the 3 levels. So in any case, the Gemara now says how this is a proof. Now, if you were following in the actual brisa, there are different lines in the brisa that imply different things. For example, just to see it before we see in the Gemara. For example, it says here, paretz ka'omed, that you can't have paretz ka'omed. Now, that implies that paretz ka'omed is a problem. But then it says in the very next line, im haya paretz meruba la'omed. You have to have more empty space than walled-in space. That implies the other direction. And the same thing as it goes on to the case of the panels which are between 4 and 10. So it says, shelo yehe bein zeh lozeh kimiluo. Sounds like paretz ka'omed is a problem. Shelo yehe paretz ka'omed. Again, paretz ka'omed is a problem. Sounds like Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua. And then it goes on to say, vim haya omed meruba la paretz. Sounds like you need to have more walled-in space than paretz. And sounds like paretz ka'omed would be a problem in that situation. So you have different implications, which the Gemara is about to point out. So the Gemara says, Katani mihas. Nevertheless, what does it say over here? Katani mihas reisha. It says in the very first case, migimel vi'adalit. It says, not the very first case, in the second case, from 3 until 4. Uvilvad shelo yehei bein zeh lozeh kimiluo. So it says that you cannot have an equal amount of open space to walled-in space. You can't have paretz ka'omed. Tiyuf to the Rav Papa. That seems like a refutation of Rav Papa. Rav Papa said paretz ka'omed is fine. So Amar lach Rav Papa. So Rav Papa will say to you, for that case, how are we going to read it? My miluo nichnas v'yotze. When it says you can't have kimiluo, it means nichnas v'yotze. Again, it means that you'd be able to easily get in another panel, which means there's actually a little extra empty space, and that's what it really means. It really means there's a little more empty space than walled-in space, and that would be a problem. Paretz ka'omed would be fine. And he says, hachinam mistaber. That makes sense. Minaktanim haya paretz meruba al ha'omed af keneged ha'omed aser. Because what does it go on to say in that case? It says if you have more open space than omed, then it's going to be a problem even keneged ha'omed. Ha-ka'omed mutter. That line implied that if it was equal, it would be mutter shmamina. So you see from that line that that's exactly how you should read it, and also the word miluo should be benichnas v'yotze. That's how Rav Papa is going to read that line. So the Gemara then says, well, in that case, le'matavet yufte de Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua. When you focus on that line, let's make that a refutation of Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua, because it says you need to have more paretz to be a problem. So Amar Lach, so Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua say v'letaimech ema seifa. Well, according to you, let's look at the end. It says im haya omed meruba ala paretz. It says if you have more omed than paretz, af keneged ha-paretz mutter, then keneged ha-paretz it's going to be mutter. Ha-ki-paretz aser. That implies that that paretz ka-omed is aser. So therefore, that part implies like me. Seifa kashel Rav Papa, reisha kashel Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua. What comes out is that the beginning is, or the end rather, is a kasha on Rav Papa, the end part of the brisa, and the beginning part of the brisa, the beginning part of the Tosefta, is going to be a kasha on Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua. So the Gemara answers, Seifa Rav Papa lo kasha. So the Seifa we can answer for Rav Papa. Aidi the Tana reisha paretz meruba ala omed. Since in the reisha used the term paretz meruba ala omed, Tana Seifa omed meruba ala paretz. So in the end, it uses the term omed meruba ala paretz, but it doesn't really mean that. Really, it means to say that paretz ka-omed is already a problem. Really means paretz ka-omed is fine. Paretz meruba ala omed is the problem. And in the Seifa, when it says omed meruba ala paretz is good, it really could have been paretz ka-omed is also good. We just wanted to use similar terminology between the Reish and the Seifa. And the Gemara is going to say the same thing for Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua. Reish or Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua lo kasha. The first part is also not a kasha in Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua. Aidi the boy lemisni Seifa. Since at the end of the Tosefta it says omed meruba ala paretz, that you need to have more walled-in space than open space to be okay. Tana reisha paretz meruba ala omed. We say in the reisha paretz meruba ala omed, but again, according to Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua, paretz ka-omed would also be a problem. So now, so basically, you have various phrases in the Tosefta which go various directions. Each Amora reinterprets according to his opinion. But the Gemara says still it's better according to Rav Papa. Bishlam Rav Papa misham hachi lo arev lu v'tani lu. Said the Gemara says, according to Rav Papa, I understand why you can't put together the first case where it was less than 3 tvachim and the second case where we had panels from 3 tvachim to 4 tvachim. Why? We'll see that in Rashi. But according to Rav Huna Breda Rav Yoshua, you should be able to put together the first two cases. Well, how do you do that? As follows: Kol shu pachos mishlosha, anything that is less than 3. Ushlosha, and if the panels are 3, tzarich shelo yehei bein zeh lezeh shlosha. There should not be 3 tvachim between them. Meaning, what the Gemara is saying, we'll see this in Rashi, what the Gemara is saying is, according to Rav Huna Breda Rav Yoshua, in both the Reisha and in the middle case, the problem is when there's exactly 3 tvachim. Once you have exactly 3 tvachim, you have a problem. Why? Well, if you have exactly 3 tvachim, you eliminate lavud, and you also have paretz ka'omed. Paretz ka'omed is a problem according to Rav Huna Breda Rav Yoshua. But according to Rav Papa, exactly 3 tvachim is not a problem in the middle case, because that's exactly paretz ka'omed. If you would have a panel of 3 and exactly 3 tvachim between it, that would be paretz ka'omed. It would be fine according to Rav Papa. It's only if it's a little more than 3 tvachim, so you have to rephrase it as kimiluo, so that you can have that extra little space of nichnas v'omed. So that's why the Gemara is saying you wouldn't be able to combine it. Rashi here explains, Bishlomo Rav Papa de Omar paretz ka'omed mutter. It works out according to Rav Papa, who says paretz ka'omed is mutter. Misham hachi lo arav. That's why you can't put them together. Gimel bahade pachos mi gimel. We can't put together the case of panels of 3 tvachim with panels of less than 3 tvachim. Ulemisni kolshu pachos mi gimel v'gimel tzarich shelo yehei ben zel lezeh gimel. Right? You can't say that. De lo matzi lemeimar tzarich shelo yehei ben zel lezeh gimel. You can't say you can't have 3 tvachim between them. To kaven de omed gimel lo ichbas lani paretz nami gimel. Because if it's exactly panels of 3, we wouldn't mind having a space of 3. Da paretz ka'omed mutter, because he holds paretz ka'omed is mutter. Umishamachi afseke la'asni egabe pachos midalid lemisni be kimiluo. That's why instead of using the word 3 tvachim, we use the word kimiluo to have a mashma benichnas v'yotze. There you could say the word miluo means not exactly the same amount of empty space, but even a little more empty space, so that you can easily have put the thing in and out. So that's why, again, according to Rav Papa, we understand why it needs to be divided up, but according to Rav Huna Breda Rav Yoshua, you should be able to combine the terminology of the first and second case. So the Gemara answers simply, Mishum de lo dami psula de reisha le psula de seifa. The reason why we divide it up is not because you can't put it together. You could. In theory, Rav Huna Breda Rav Yoshua, you could phrase it all together, but the psul in the reisha and the psul in the seifa are fundamentally different, and that's why we want to list them differently. Psula de reisha kadei shelo yizdakar hagadiba v'asachas. The psul of the reisha is that you cannot have 3 tvachim, because then you're going to lose your lavud. It's the amount of space that a goat can barrel through in one shot. So therefore, once you reach the point where there's no lavud, you have a problem connecting everything together. Psula de seifa shelo yeh paretz ka'omed. But the psul in the seifa is a different issue. The psul in the seifa is that it can't be paretz ka'omed, so they're 2 separate issues, so we want to list them separately. Rashi over here explains, Mishum de lo dami psula de pachos mi gimel psula de gimel. The psul that exists in a wall where the poles are less than 3 and the spaces are less than 3 is different than the psul that would exist in the case where the panels are 3 tvachim. The psula de pachos mi gimel lo have matzi lemisli beparts meruba laomed. In the situation of less than 3 tvachim, there's no issue of parts meruba laomed. The chol kamet lo have parts gimel, because as long as the pirza is not 3 tvachim, afagav de omed tefach u parts tvachayim kasher. For example, in the first case, let's say you would have poles that are just a tefach, and you would have empty spaces that are 2 tvachim. So you'd actually have more empty space than walled in space. It would still be okay. Umichimata parts l'shlosha ashmeina devahachi mikri parts mishum yizdakar gedi. And we're telling you that when you reach 3 tvachim, now you've got a problem. There's no lavud. But psula de seifa hechad de omed gimel. Let's say you have the second case where the walled-in panels are 3 tvachim. Lo mifsal mishum dikor gedi. The issue there is not the fact that it's 3 tvachim that the gedi is going to burst through. Diyav omed meruba lo have a chashina legedi. If there would have been a little more omed than empty space, we don't care if it's 3 tvachim. You have omed meruba la parts, no problem. Ela mishamai mifsal beparts gimel. What's the issue? Misham davi parts ka omed. There the issue is parts ka omed. V'tana lagmure midos de mechitza kasi. And the whole point of this Tosefta is to show the different levels of mechitzas. So that's why we move on to a separate case to show you a new kind of psul. Gemara now goes into analyzing the Tosefta itself. So the Gemara says like this: Pachas mishlosha money. Who is the one who holds that less than 3 tvachim is lavud? That's Rabbanan. That's the Rabbanan. The Amri pachas mishlosha amrin and lavud. They say less than 3 tvachim, we say lavud. Shlosha lo amrin and lavud. That if it's 3 tvachim, we don't say lavud. Ema seifa. But now let's look at the second case of the Tosefta. Kol shlosha umishlosha v'yad arba. The case over there is that if it's 3 tvachim until 4 tvachim. And the Gemara is going to ask that seems like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Let's take a look at Rashi. Pachas mi gimel money Rabbanan himi. The kamaflik bein pachas mi gimel legimel. From the fact that you're making a distinction between less than 3 tvachim and 3 tvachim, shma mi no Rabbanan hi demefal ginami bein pachas mi gimel legimel. That's the sheet of the Rabbanan that say that love it applies by less than 3 tvachim and not by 3 tvachim or more. Ema seifa kolshu gimel mi gimel v'adal. Well, let's look at the seifa where you have from 3 tvachim until 4 tvachim. From the fact that the second case is making a distinction, any distinction, between less than 4 tvachim and 4 tvachim, the ka'amar pachas midalid imparts yeser olav afkeneged ha'omed aser. Because what does it say over there? It says that if it's less than 4 tvachim, if you have more paruts, then it's aser completely, even keneged the omed. V'dalid guve katani seifa. But when the panel reaches 4 tvachim, what does it say? It says demater kenegdo v'afagav the parts yeser olav. There it says even if you have more parts than omed, Keneged the Omed is still okay once the panel is 4 tvachim. Shma minor Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. That sounds like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, who considers 4 tvachim to be something of chashivas. We'll see more on the next Amud in the next video on Daf Tazayin Amud Beis Im Yirtzeh Hashem.